The dumbbell row is an upper body unilateral pulling accessory exercise. It's great for building a strong back, improving grip, and it can be performed at every fitness level. Now let's dive into the how-to. Step 1, grab your dumbbell. Remember, this is not an ego exercise. It's often programmed for hypertrophy and general strength and to add additional workload on your pulling days, so grab a weight that you're comfortable with that's not going to cause you to alter your form. Step 2, setting for the dumbbell row. So there are a lot of different ways to set for this movement. We'll talk about the variations later on in this video, but for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to do the more traditional 3 points of contact with 2 on the bench and 1 on the ground. Step 3, setting those points of contact. So the first point of contact, the knee on the bench, is typically going to be under the hip, if not just in front of it. The hand itself is going to go in front of the shoulder, if not just under it. And that foot on the ground is going to have some bend in the knee, and it's going to typically be parallel with the knee on the bench, and that's to keep the hips in line and to allow you to set that back. Step 4, setting the back. So if you have trouble finding your points of contact, one way to approach this is to think about setting the back and then scaling from there. You want to maintain a nice tabletop position when performing this movement, so your back's in that nice neutral positioning. If I were to set something on my back, it's pretty flat and I could probably balance it decently well. If your points of contact are causing your back to be flared up in any way or dip down, then more than likely your points of contact are a little bit off. Find a positioning that allows you to get into a nice, strong, set back position. Step 5, gripping the dumbbell and your breathing. So when we pick up the dumbbell, we want to think about our hand being a hook, similar to how we do in the deadlift. We don't want to be squeezing so hard to we're rounding the dumbbell in. Oftentimes you'll see people compensate and pull that dumbbell too far into the body. So in terms of breathing, as we're at the bottom of this position, we have a nice step back. We're going to take a nice big belly breath and then transition into step 6. All right, step 6, the row. Now that we have our nice tabletop position, we're gonna grip that bench with our opposite hand, and we're gonna take a nice big belly breath and row fully back, thinking about contracting the lat. Oftentimes you'll see beginners flail the arm to get it up. That's not very efficient for a full contraction of the lat, or you'll see that elbow flare out. Once again, not efficient. Think about starting a lawnmower, keep that elbow nice and tight, and pull back as opposed to up. So pull back and think about really pulling that lat nice taut and tight. 4 benefits that come along with the dumbbell row. Number 1, it's great movement for upper back and lat hypertrophy and just general strength. You're going to perform these as an accessory movement more than likely, and for higher reps with less weight. This makes them a great option for slowing down the eccentric, doing pauses, and really focusing on that full lat contraction. Number 2, these are a great movement for balancing asymmetries in the lats and upper back. If you pull out with an offset grip, more than likely you might have a little bit of an asymmetry with these muscles. This is a great exercise to target those and figure out what might be lagging. The third benefit is the potential to have grip strength carryover. So obviously you're not moving as much of a weight as you would in, like, let's say a rack pull, heavy carries, or a deadlift, but you are holding a weight and moving it up and down for multiple reps nonetheless. This opens up the possibility for having grip strength carryover. The fourth benefit is that this movement is great for any fitness level, and it can be performed pretty much anywhere. If you're on the go traveling and you have, let's say, dumbbells or kettlebells available, you can perform dumbbell rows. On the topic of performing this at any fitness level, it's great for experienced athletes because it adds total work to their pulling days, and it can be a great way to cause some hypertrophy in the lat and upper back, how we talked about in point 1. And if you're brand new to strength training in general, this is a great movement to ease you into what it feels like to contract the lat and also just build up the upper back strength for bigger compound movements. All right, let's talk about programming the dumbbell row. So there are a lot of different ways you can add this into a program. Typically, it will be used as an accessory on a pulling day or a day that you're really trying to get in additional pulling work. Now you can put them on a pushing day as well. If you like to perform lighter pulling movements in between your pushing movements, you could do that as well to kind of create that balance of push and pull. But in terms of putting them into a pulling day, I would recommend putting them a little bit further down in your program if you're performing just normal reps. If you want to add pauses or slow down eccentrics, then you might want to put them a little bit up, and that's solely for the purpose of not being too fatigued to perform quality reps. One thing to note is that you do not want to perform them with a swinging torso. You want to have that full contraction of the lat if your goal is hypertrophy and just all around general strength. So program them accordingly based on your level of fatigue and how intense the movements are before the dumbbell row. Outside of the dumbbell row variation we discussed in this video, there are a couple different ways you'll see people set for this movement. Number one, and probably the most common, is supporting the upper body with something like a bench or a rack, and then having the feet in an even position. And then another way is in something called the sumo row, where you have a wide stance, you're leaning on that front arm, and it's supported with your own body weight, and then you're rowing from there. So now, is one of these ways better to set than the other? Yes and no. It really comes down to what you're most comfortable with, what your goals are. If your goal is to move more weight, then obviously find a position that accommodates that. And if your goal is to just get the work in, then you can pretty much do whichever variation you like best. That concludes our dumbbell row video. Now, there are multiple ways to skin the cat with this one in terms of setting and performing the movement. What's most important is that you're getting the full contraction of the lat, you're keeping that nice set torso, and you're finding a position that's most comfortable for you. If you want to learn more about this movement in terms of the programming, tips, and benefits, check out our full guide and Google BarBend and dumbbell row.